My name is Jamil Chagra. I'm 73 years old, and I'm writing this at 2 in the morning because sleep stopped coming around the time my youngest daughter smiled at me across the dinner table while her husband's hand rested on the deed to my house. I noticed the tiredness first, not in my body that had been tired for years, but in how people looked at me after I turned 65, like I was already fatting. My wife, Sarah, had passed 5 years before, and I remember thinking that grief would be the hardest thing I'd ever carry. I was wrong about that. I have 3 children. Michael, who's 48 and runs an accounting firm in the city. Lisa, who's 45 and married to a lawyer named Robert. And Emma, my youngest at 42, who never quite figured out what she wanted to do, so she became very good at figuring out what other people had. After Sarah died, the kids came around more. Michael brought casseroles that his wife didn't make. Lisa sat in my kitchen and talked about how we should figure out your situation. Emma just started appearing, usually when she needed something. At first it was small. Could they borrow the truck? Could Emma stay for a few weeks while she got back on her feet? Could Michael use the guest house to work from home during the pandemic? Could they all stop by Sunday for family dinner, and could I make it nice? I'm a simple man. I worked as a mechanic for 52 years. My hands have seen more engine grease than they've seen soap. I own my house outright, paid for it in 1987 with money I saved penny by penny. I had a small pension, Social Security, and Sarah had left me a modest life insurance policy. I wasn't rich, but I had security. I had a place. I had a life that was small but mine. The thing about being tired and the way they assumed I was tired, the way that comes with age, is that people think it means you're not paying attention. They think it means you miss things. And maybe I did miss some things, but I didn't miss everything. Michael started with the "Dad, we're worried about you" conversations. He'd sit across from me with that serious face he wore in his photo on the company website, and he'd say things like, "You're rattling around in this big house. Wouldn't it be easier to downsize? Wouldn't you be happier in a place where people could help you?" He'd hold my hand while he said it, and his hand would be warm, but his eyes would be somewhere else entirely. Lisa was more direct. She brought Robert, her lawyer husband, and they came with papers. "Just to talk things through, Dad. No pressure, but we should really think about power of attorney in case something happens. And maybe we should discuss the house. Is it really something you can maintain alone?" Robert smiled a lot during this conversation. He had one of those smiles that doesn't reach the eyes. I'd seen it on people's faces in waiting rooms when they were about to hear bad news about their engines. Emma was the softest touch. She'd sit beside me and rest her head on my shoulder, something she hadn't done since she was 12 years old, and she'd say things like, "Dad, I want to help you. Let me help you." And I'd want to believe her. I'd want to believe that this was about love and not about the fact that her marriage was imploding, her credit was ruined, and she'd been served an eviction notice. This is the part where I should tell you I was blind, that I didn't see it coming. But that wouldn't be the truth, and I've decided that truth matters more now than it ever did. I saw it coming from miles away. What I didn't expect was how much it would hurt, not the financial part, though that was bad. The financial part was almost clean, almost impersonal. What hurt was the personal mathematics of it, the calculation that I was worth more to them dead or diminished than alive and independent. The understanding that my children had looked at me and done a cost-benefit analysis and decided I was something to be managed, not someone to be loved. There was a moment, though, a small moment. It was a Tuesday, and I'd gone to the grocery store because I still did things like that, still moved through the world as though it contained me in some meaningful way. I was in the produce section, trying to pick out tomatoes that weren't mealy, and a young woman, maybe 30, with tired eyes came and stood next to me. She was reaching for the same tomatoes, and our hands bumped. She looked at me and smiled, and something in the way she smiled, like she actually saw me, not the old man shape I'd become, made me smile back. "How do you pick them?" she asked. "I can never get it right." I showed her. I told her to feel for the give, to trust that you could feel a tomato's readiness in your palm. I told her the smaller ones were usually sweeter. I told her that Sarah, I said my wife's name out loud, which I hadn't done in months, used to say that a perfect tomato was like a small miracle you could hold. The woman listened. She bought the tomatoes I suggested, and as she was leaving she turned back and said, thank you for being kind. And then she was gone, and I was standing in the produce section holding a tomato, and I felt something shift in me. Not large, not dramatic, just a small turn towards something that felt like it might be human again. I didn't know how much I'd need that moment. The real breakdown of my family happened over the course of 3 months, though it felt like it happened all at once. Michael went first. He came to me with a real estate agent and a proposed listing price. The market is hot right now, Dad. We should move quickly. We've already drafted a trust that would protect you. You'd get quarterly distributions and we'd manage it all for you. No stress. I asked him who we was. He said, me, Lisa, and Emma, family. We want to take care of you. I said no. I said the house was mine and I wasn't selling it. I was quiet when I said it, the way I'd learned to be quiet after 50 years of marriage, the way you speak when you know the other person has already made up their mind. Michael's face changed. The warmth drained out of it like water from a cracked pipe. You're making a mistake, he said. You're going to need help, and when you do, don't come to us. He didn't visit for 6 weeks after that. Lisa didn't wait for Michael's permission to be disappointed. She called, and I could hear the tightness in her voice. She said things like irresponsible and selfish and thinking only of yourself. She said I was denying them their inheritance. I asked her why she and her siblings had decided that I had to give them anything while I was still breathing. She hung up on me. But it was Emma who broke me. Emma came to the house on a Tuesday, not the same Tuesday as the tomato woman, but close enough that I sometimes wonder if the universe was trying to give me something to hold onto during what came next. She came with Robert, her lawyer husband. Robert had papers, so many papers. He spread them across my kitchen table like a magician, revealing the trick that would make me disappear. He'd prepared a financial analysis. Emma had been extremely generous in not pressing her claims about the house earlier. She'd loaned me money over the years, money I didn't remember borrowing, but there it was in his documents, signed in my name in handwriting that looked almost like mine. She'd paid for care and maintenance of my property. She'd invested in my future. And now, Robert explained with that smile of his, it was time for me to pay it back, or we could be sensible about this. We could put the house up as collateral. We could restructure the debt. We could make it easy. I looked at my youngest daughter while her husband explained how to take my life apart. Emma wouldn't look at me. She looked at her hands, at the papers, at the wall behind me, but she wouldn't look at me. Emma, I said, my voice sounded like it was coming from underground. Emma, is this what you want? She didn't answer immediately. For a moment, I thought maybe she would look up. I thought maybe she would say something that would make this make sense. I thought maybe there was still a person in my daughter who loved me, who remembered being held by these hands, who remembered me teaching her to ride a bike, staying up all night when she was sick with pneumonia, going without new clothes so she could go to summer camp. I want to be okay, she said, and she was crying, which was almost worse than if she hadn't been. I want to not be afraid all the time. I want to not be broke and failing and alone, and this is how it has to be. Robert put his hand on her shoulder, and she leaned into it. I told them to leave. I told them to get out of my house. I told them I'd be calling my own lawyer, and I'd be making my own decisions about what happened next. Robert smiled that smile and said, "You do that, Mr. Chagra, but you should know that we've already documented everything. The courts will see it our way." When they left, I sat at my kitchen table for 4 hours. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just sat and thought about the mathematics of love and how it had all come down to numbers that didn't add up. I broke after that, not dramatically. There was no furniture thrown or walls punched, but quietly I broke. I stopped answering the phone. I stopped going to the grocery store. I stopped doing the small things that kept me tethered to being alive. I sat in my house, my house, legally and morally mine, though I wasn't sure that mattered anymore, and I waited to see what would happen. The dark secret, the thing that changed how I understood everything, didn't come from outside. It came from inside me. I found the letters, Sarah's letters. She'd written them in the last months of her life, and she'd left them in the nightstand drawer with a note that said, "For Jamil, when you're ready." I wasn't ready. I hadn't been ready for 5 years, but I was ready now because I had nothing left to be ready for. She wrote about Emma. She wrote about noticing in the way that mothers notice things that Emma didn't love very deeply. "It's not cruelty," Sarah wrote in her careful handwriting. "It's something closer to absence. It's like she was born without the part that lets you feel what someone else feels. She loves you, I think. But the way a tree loves the rain, because it needs it, not because it understands what's being given." Sarah wrote about worrying that Emma would hurt me. She wrote about asking Michael and Lisa to look after me, to keep watch. She wrote about love and how it isn't about protecting people from consequences, but about telling them the truth when they most need to hear it. She wrote, "Jamil, my love, if you are reading this, something has happened, something I worried would happen, and I want you to know that this says nothing about you. You are a good man. You have loved well and fully. That you are being hurt by someone you love does not make you wrong. It makes you human. And humans break sometimes. We break and we heal and we love again, even when it would be easier not to." The letter was dated 3 weeks before she died. I understood then that Sarah had known. She'd seen what was coming and she tried to prepare me. And I'd been too tired, really tired this time, soul tired, to hear her. The rock bottom came a week later. I sat in my house with the lights off, thinking about how clean it would be, how final. The thought surprised me with how much peace it offered. Not peace like joy. Peace like the end of a conversation you'd been having for too long. It was almost beautiful, in the way a clear decision can be beautiful. I was holding a bottle of sleeping pills when the knock came. It was soft, not the knock of someone demanding entry, but of someone asking permission. I didn't want permission from anyone. I didn't answer. The knock came again. When I finally opened the door, I found the tomato woman. Her name was Rachel. She told me this without me asking. She said, "I'm sorry for coming unannounced. I work at the grocery store, and I mentioned to my mother that there was this older man who was very kind to me about tomatoes. And my mother works in insurance, and she uses your full name sometimes in conversations. And she mentioned that you lived on Maple Street, and I remembered you mentioning that, and I looked up your address, and I'm aware this sounds insane." She was holding a container of homemade marinara sauce. "I made this," she said, "with the tomatoes you told me about, and I wanted you to have it. Also, I wanted to check that you were okay, because I haven't seen you at the store in 3 weeks, and I have some kind of weird anxiety thing where I start worrying about people." I stood in the doorway of my house, holding a bottle of sleeping pills in one hand, looking at this woman, this stranger who had no reason to care whether I existed or not, and something in me cracked open. Not broke. Cracked open like an egg, like something might be able to emerge. She saw the pills. She didn't ask what they were. She just gently reached out her hand and said, "Can I come in? I know we don't know each other, but I think maybe right now you shouldn't be alone." I gave her the pills. I don't know why. I could have lied. I could have said they were vitamins, but I gave them to her and I sat down on the kitchen floor of my house and I cried in a way I hadn't cried since Sarah died. Rachel sat beside me and didn't try to fix it. She just sat there, a witness to my falling apart. The turning point wasn't dramatic. It was Rachel insisting that I eat the marinara sauce. It was her staying for 4 hours, then coming back the next day. It was her bringing a lawyer friend, not a smart one like Robert, but a good one. It was her sitting with me while I made phone calls to my own attorney, while I sent copies of everything to the 3 people I'd created and raised, and who had tried to unmake me. It was the understanding, slowly, that I was not alone in this world, even though the people who were supposed to love me had tried very hard to make me believe I was. My lawyer told me the truth. My children's case was weak. The documents were forged or coerced or both. The supposed loans had no legitimate paper trail. The financial analysis was creative fiction. Robert had made a crucial mistake. He'd been too detailed, too thorough, too confident. He'd documented enough that my lawyer could use it against them. When the suit was dismissed, Michael called me. For the first time in months, my eldest son called me. He cried. He said he was sorry. He said they'd talked to therapists, all three of them, and they'd understood what they'd done, and they wanted to make it right. I believed him about the therapists. I believed him about the understanding. But I wasn't sure I could believe him about the making it right part, because some things can't be unmade. You can't unknow that your children looked at you and saw a problem to be solved. You can't unknow the mathematics of their love. I told him I needed time. I told him I wasn't ready. I told him that I had a new life now, one that didn't include him yet, and I wasn't sure it would. The twist, the thing that changed how I understood everything, came 6 months later. Emma called, not to apologize, though she did that too. She called because she was in a hospital and she'd had a breakdown of her own. The marriage had ended. Robert had taken everything he could take and left her with debt and humiliation. She'd hit rock bottom much harder than I had because she hit it alone. She asked if she could come stay with me for a while. I said no, and I meant it. I don't think people realize how much it costs sometimes to love someone who's hurt you, how much it costs to open your door again to the person who tried to take it. But then she said something. She said, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need a place to sleep. I have nowhere else to go." And I understood that she was finally telling me the truth, not asking for forgiveness dressed up as a request, actually asking for help, the way you ask when you've used up all your pride and all your lies. I said yes, not because she deserved it, not because we'd suddenly become a real family again, but because somewhere in my chest there was still a part of me that was her father, and that part didn't know how to turn away someone who was breaking. Rachel thought I was making a mistake. She told me so very clearly the night before Emma arrived. She said, "You know she might hurt you again." I said, "Yes, I know," she said, "and you're doing this anyway." I said, "Yes, but not for her, for me, because I want to know that I'm still the kind of person who opens his door. I want to know that what they did didn't turn me into someone who closes his heart just because it's been closed to before." Emma stayed for 4 months. It was hard. We didn't talk about what happened. We talked about small things, food, weather, television, books. We rebuilt a relationship the way you rebuild something broken, slowly, carefully, knowing it will never be exactly what it was before but might be something real anyway. She got a job. She got her own apartment. She went to therapy. She called on my birthday and didn't cry, which felt like progress. Michael reached out again. Lisa sent a letter. They wanted to rebuild too. I'm not going to tell you that we became a perfect family. We didn't. We became something more honest than we were before, a family that knew what we were capable of doing to each other and chose to love anyway, knowing it was a choice and not an accident. The final thing, the thing that stays with me, happened almost a year after the tomato woman walked into my life. I was at the grocery store. I'd gone back to going to the grocery store. I was in the produce section, touching tomatoes with the care of someone who understands that small things matter. A teenage boy, maybe 14, with acne and the hunched shoulders of someone who's being bullied, came and stood next to me. He was taking forever to pick a single tomato, putting them back, taking them back. He looked lost. I showed him. I told him about the give, about trust, about how you can feel a tomato's readiness in your palm. I told him about a woman named Sarah who understood things like that. I told him that paying attention to small things, the perfect tomato, the way the light hits at sunset, the people who surprise you with kindness, paying attention to small things is how you stay human. He listened. He bought the tomatoes I suggested. As he was leaving, he turned back and said, thank you for being kind." And I understood that this was the real story. Not the betrayal, not the breaking, not even the redemption. The real story was that kindness comes back to you, sometimes in the form of a tomato at 2 in the morning, or a boy in a produce section, or the slow rebuilding of trust with people you never thought you'd trust again. My name is Jamil Chagra. I'm 73 years old. I still live in my house. My children visit sometimes. Rachel comes over most Sundays. I go to the grocery store and I help people pick tomatoes, and I tell them about paying attention, about trust, about how you survive betrayal by not letting it become the only story you tell about yourself. I read Sarah's letters sometimes. The one I think about most is the one where she says that breaking is human, that we break and we heal and we love again, even when it would be easier not to. She was right about that. I'm writing this at 2 in the morning because I still can't sleep sometimes, but not because I'm waiting for death anymore. I'm awake because there's still so much life left to witness, so much small kindness left to offer, so many tomatoes left to pick. And that, it turns out, is enough.